Welcome to Bill's Bridge Tip of the Day, Wednesday, February 13th, 2013. We're starting a brand new section here today. Let's talk about defensive bidding and the overall structure. I'm going to start with some basic principles and philosophies, and from there we're going to develop an overall strategical approach to defensive bidding as a whole. I suspect you'll have some surprises along the way. When the opponents start the auction, you, as the defender, are at a disadvantage. The opener's partner knows something about his partner. Basically, he has an opening hand. You don't. You don't know anything about what your partner has. As a result, when the opponents begin the auction, you have different objectives than the opener's team. The opener's team is for the most part, finding out whether they have game and whether they have a slam, and there's a lot of bids that are forcing, descriptive, ask questions, etc. You are less likely to reach a game as a defender because you know that there is an opponent that has an opening bid opposite you. You're more likely to be doubled and set. In other words, you're taking on a lot of risk. You have a danger of being doubled and set. Your objective is more likely to either interfere with the opponents, get them too high where you may be able to set them, or possibly to sacrifice. Only occasionally will you find game or the like. Only if you have a great fit. Some principles of defensive bidding. It's better to get in from the beginning. Another way of saying is sandbagging is usually ineffective. Get in quick, get your punch, and get out of there. Be more descriptive and exact on your first bid if you can. That's true of anything in bridge, if it's possible. Strong offensive hands should begin with preemptive. That is, if you're offensive but not defensive. On the other hand, if you have strong defensive hands, you should have room for partner to describe his hand, rather than preempt. You may preempt your partner instead of the opponents. Major suits, particularly spades, are the top dog. So, in your strategy as a defender, emphasize spades and hearts and spades in particular. And vulnerability is a critical aspect of decision-making process as an overcaller or doubler or whatever your defensive strategy is. You have to be much more careful and much more sensitive to vulnerability than you would as a opener. One-suited hands are simple to bid. I say that with a quote, maybe tongue-in-cheek, but the simple overcall is stronger in defense than a jump overcall. The principle of preemption. Now, there are a couple of cases we're going to cover where that is not the case, but in general, jump overcalls are weak and they're intended as preemption. The level of the bid and the vulnerability conditions control the use of the bid, both in overcalls, jump overcalls, and in some of these other two-suited hand conditions we'll cover shortly. Most responses to overcall, the advancer's bids, are descriptive but non-forcing. There are a few cases where you may want to force your partner to bid as the advancer, but most of the time your bids are descriptive and not forcing. It's a different environment. You have different objectives. Two-suited hands, where one bid tells the suit, both suits, is an advantage over other bidding structures. Why? When your partner knows that you have two-suited hands, the odds of finding a fit in one of those suits is great. It's over 70%. If partner knows the suits from one bid. So two-suited hands, it's really advantageous in one bid to tell your partner what suits, plural, you own. If you have to ask, the opponents may preempt and you may never find out what that second suit is. It'd be too high, too risky to ask the question. Hands are usually preemptive in nature that are two-suited, but they may also be very strong in some cases. As we'll see in various cases we go through, with intermediate strength, tend to bid naturally, that is, overcall. Three-suited and balanced hands are often handled by the double, or by a natural no-trump bid. That makes sense. Yes, there are different two-suited doubles, and we're going to cover some of those. And yes, there's distributional no-trump jumps. Where do we go from here? Here's what I'm proposing. Look at your defensive strategy that you have today, but look at it with a fresh perspective, free from what you may have learned in the past. Don't assume that what's there is the best there is. And what I'm going to do is tomorrow I'm going to give you 10 hands. In each case, I'm going to ask you, what would you do defensively with your existing defensive structure? And I'll keep returning to these hands as we develop our defensive strategy.